everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I have my April book haul and wrap up. So April was the month of the magical readathon. I will say I finished all of those prompts. I did not entirely finish my April TBR, which I think we talked about in May's TBR, but I do have a lot of books actually to talk about for the wrap up. The book haul we are going to get through first is not as many, so hopefully I can do everything in one video because that's how I've been liking to do it, keeping my stats sort of together, that kind of stuff. I have 11 books to haul. All of them are pre-orders except for one, which was an arc that I read that we will talk about, and then I just had to have a copy. So none of them were ones that I went out and purchased this month because I just wanted to spend money on books, which is good because I spent way too much last month with all the buy one get one half off manga sale at Barnes & Noble. So I'm starting to get back on track with my reading to book buying ratio. Still not quite there yet, but we're doing better because these were basically all pre-orders or book boxes. So let's go into the book haul, talk about all of those ones, and then we will get into a pretty big wrap up. So the first one that I have here is the one that I actually purchased this month, which is The Plus One by Maisie Eddings. I read this as an arc, which we will talk about later. But I loved it so much that I had to buy a copy. I mean, I think that sort of tells you what's going on here. This is technically book 3 in a series of companion novels that I have not read the first 2 of, but I think that's fine because they all follow different couples. I do want to then go through and check out the other ones. But basically this is a fake dating situation between two people who are sort of friends, sort of rivals. They've been friends since childhood through her brother, but they are also sort of friends, but at the same time they love to just push each other's buttons, so it's not exactly an enemies to lovers situation, but we do definitely have the fake dating aspect of it. And just so people know, this does deal with some hard topics, mental health topics, and PTSD and anxiety and that kind of stuff, and I did like how that was handled. It wasn't something that I was fully expecting because I think the summary just mentions that one of the characters is a doctor who goes out into the world, almost like a Doctors Without Borders sort of thing, and does that kind of stuff and has issues or secrets from his friends. They don't actually specify stuff in here, but he is definitely dealing with mental health stuff, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, I had to buy this one. The next couple books I wanted to talk about are from, I think it was March? No, April? April? I don't remember. Is this April or March's? It's Rainbow Crate. The reason I don't remember is because so many book boxes have that current month's box coming out later, you know what I mean? This is March actually. So we got it in April, but it was March's Rainbow Crate. So the first book that we have here is Ravensong by Kayla Faye. This is the pretty dust jacket that they have. There is also the original cover underneath, which I'm curious because this one's very high action based, and then this one has, it looks like multiple characters with interesting weapons. I don't know. I'm curious about this one. I believe this one is going to be, let's see, I actually don't know what I believe, but I like that Rainbow Crate has these nutrition facts here. So it does have representation for Sapphic, ADHD, PTSD, non-binary Jewish, and Muslim. It's urban fantasy, and then for the plot we have some Celtic mythology, a plot twist, found family, and no one hurts my friends or family. That's a very interesting dynamic. I'm excited about that. And then for demographics, it's young adult with just a little bit of adult. So I guess there's some crossover appeal for this. I don't know anything else about it except for it should be fantasy, and it said urban fantasy, so I do have this one. The main reason I got March's Rainbow Crate is actually this book here, I Am Not Your Chosen One by Evelyn Benvey. So first of all, Rainbow Crate does gorgeous editions. of indie books. Like, this is an indie book that I've actually had on my radar for a while, and so when I saw that this was going to be one of the books in March's box, I was like, you know what, we're getting this one, because we don't actually know what it's going to look like, but their editions are gorgeous. Like, this is gorgeous. So I'm very, very excited. Underneath the dust jacket, like, look at the shininess on this one. It's just, can we see? It's so light purple that it's a little hard, but it's gorgeous. Very, very gorgeous. And then we do obviously have the sprayed, stenciled edges. Again, the books are just gorgeous. I know this one is going to be male romance. Ooh. End papers say the chosen one in stars. And we do have a signed book plate. Like, everything just about these books, when they do their indie books, it's gorgeous. So don't know much else about this except for sort of it being on my radar and everything like that. So this does say, for representation, we have bi-romantic male, gray sexual male, non-binary, sapphic, Vietnamese white biracial. It is going to be contemporary fantasy. And then for plot, we have found family. It subverts tropes. There are prophecies and cute angels. And for demographics, it is 100% adult. So this is an adult indie fantasy romance that, like I said, I've had on my radar for a while. And yeah, I knew I wanted this, and the cover, it's gorgeous. I mean, like, even down here, like on the back, I needed it. You know what I mean? Speaking of book boxes, this is not actually a book box book. This was a pre-order from Illumicrate. I got the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers. So there are 4 books here. When did we put in the order for this? Sometime this year. It wasn't too long of a turnaround time. I have not read these yet. My bad. I know. It's something that I've been really, really wanting to, especially since I keep hearing about how it's queer and found family, but also has vibes of like Firefly, that kind of stuff. And like the original US covers remind me of that for sure. The thing was, I never knew like if I wanted just the US covers, even though they're not like the most gorgeous, or if I wanted to order them from the UK, because those ones are prettier. Illumicrate solved that for me. Technically this is from the UK, but these are gorgeous. Gorgeous. Like the end papers and everything, and I love space. They are signed as well. I love space. Like, my whole wedding was space themed. So yeah, I had to get these. I'm very excited to read them. I have not read them yet, but now I have really, really pretty editions that make me want to read them too. So somebody tell me I need to read these. But we have The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, A Closed and Common Orbit, Record of a Spaceborne Few, and The Galaxy and the Ground Within. Like, I'm so, so excited to have these. Like, so excited. The next one I have here was a Kickstarter thing that I funded, I think, last year. So this is an indie book, but it was like a pre-order indie Kickstarter thing. So this is Fat Witch Summer by Lizzie Ives. From my understanding, I believe this is YA, yeah, 16-year-old. I talked about this in like one of the more recent, like, oh, new releases that are coming out sort of videos. I'm very excited for this one because we do have plus size rep, and it's going to be basically like a road trip to try and steal magic for themselves, because in this world your parents get to choose like what type of magic you have once you reach a certain age, and our main character is very happy being plus size, being fat, but her mom isn't exactly happy with that, so we'll see how that representation is done. And because of that, she's afraid her mom is going to like pick for her to have like glamour magic or something like that to make her thin. So she wants to go and get something cooler. I'm excited for this. I love the cover, and so yeah. The next pre-order I have here is I Hear the Sunspot 4 Seasons Volume 1 by Yuki Fumino. This series is so weird with the how like they're labeled for each volume. This is the 6th volume in this manga, but it's the 1st volume of the 4 Seasons arc, I'm assuming. But I absolutely love this manga series. It is male-male romance, new adult, like they meet in college, and one of our characters is deaf. I believe it's deaf and not just hard of hearing. And the reason that they meet and come together is that he needs somebody to take notes for him, and this other student is his note taker for class in exchange for box lunches. I love how they've been dealing with relationships and growing up and college and like becoming adults, that kind of stuff, but also dealing with one of the characters is deaf and like how does he want to view life and how do people view him and that kind of stuff. And I absolutely love this series, and so I'm very excited for another volume. And then my last pre-order that I have here is In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. I absolutely love almost all of TJ Klune's work. Like, I've given almost every single thing that I've read 5 stars. Am I sad that this edition is not an Illumicrate edition because they didn't do one and my other 2 books that they did are freaking gorgeous? Yeah, a little bit. It is the Barnes & Noble exclusive, so we do have a little bit of stuff. So like we have this little guy on the hardcover, and we have pretty end papers, and I think there's a little bit of exclusive content in here. But yeah, it's not gonna have the very, very pretty end papers or the Illumicrate ones for the other books under the dust jacket were like a gorgeous scene, and so I'm a little disappointed that they just decided not to do that for some reason, when I'm pretty sure these were selling well enough, because they were gorgeous. But I am very, very excited for this one. I have heard many good things, and like I said, I've loved a lot of the stuff that I've read by TJ Klune, so I definitely need to read this. Yes, and then I think I said that was the last book. It's not, because I always forget that I have ebooks. I actually only have 1 ebook for this month. It is Into the Churn by Haley Reese Chow. This is going to be a YA sci-fi with romance, but it also has like a competition race aspect to it. I did actually pre-order this one because I think it had a cheaper pre-order price for the ebook version of it, and I'm very, very excited to read this because I love sci-fi. I love romance. I love games and competitions, especially ones that seem like they have dire consequences attached to them, and I'm pretty sure this one does. That's all I needed to know, so I did buy that one. I pre-ordered it, but I bought it, you know what I mean. So, those are all of the books that I have to haul. Now we are going to move into my stats and my wrap-up, because I have quite a few books that we need to talk about today. So, going into the stats, I read 21 books in April. Now, 2 of them were DNFs, so 19 whole books, but 21 things that I at least attempted to read, and that was for a total of 5,384 pages. This is the biggest month so far this year, both with book count and page number count. And I think part of that could also be that I did start some audiobooks this month. I'm not the biggest audiobook reader because I don't find that I can do a whole bunch of stuff with audiobooks. I can sometimes play little puzzle games. I can definitely do it in the car if I'm going on drives places, but I'm not able to do them a lot with a lot of other things. Like, my brain ends up focusing on the menial tasks instead of the audiobook. So I did start it with some rereads that I did this month, and I listened to a total of 23.7 hours, which is quite good. I had 3 audiobooks. We will get into that actually right now. So speaking of audiobooks, I had 3 audiobooks that I read, 3 ebooks, and 15 physical books, which is actually quite a lot for me right now because I've been doing a pretty good mix of ebooks and physical books. But yeah, going into the genre, I read 7 romances, 5 sci-fis, 3 fantasies, 3 horrors, and 3 thrillers. So a pretty good mix of things. For the book format, this is part of the reason I had so many physical books. I read 10 novels, but I also read 11 manga. So April was a 30 and 30 manga challenge month. I was not doing it as a full manga challenge for the 30 and 30 just because I knew I was not going to be able to hit 30 volumes of manga, even though I really would have liked to. But what that does mean is I was picking up a manga, like, intentionally in between different books. Like, if I knew I wasn't entirely ready to start a whole nother novel because I just finished one or whatever it was, I would try and pick up manga. So I did end up doing about half and half, which is pretty good. As for indie or traditional, I had 3 indie books versus 18 traditional books. But one good thing I will say, even though I did have 2 DNFs this month, none of them were indie books, because I've done only a couple DNFs earlier this year, but they were all indie books that I didn't really jive with, like it wasn't my thing. So I was happy that I finished 3 indie books without DNFing anything. For how I got them, 11 of them are books that I bought this year, which is good because I'm reading things that I bought, but that does mean that my owned number of books was only 9, which is not bad, but I'm trying to get through my owned TBR. So yes, reading books that I bought this year is good because then they're not staying on the TBR too long, but like I need to read some of my older books too. And then I did also read one arc, which we talked about a little bit at the beginning of the video. For age category, I had 12 adult books and 9 young adult books, so a pretty even mix, which is pretty good. And then I think the only other thing we have is star rating. Yes, so for the star rating, I did have the 2 DNFs like we talked about, but besides that, my ratings have been a little bit higher this month than the other months of the year so far. Like my average rating is a 3.97, so almost that 4-star rating, whereas earlier in the month, and even if I was like showing you all of my stats for the year so far, my average rating is like a 3.5, so not too far off, but I didn't have as many lowly rated books. So besides the DNFs, I did have 2 3 stars, 2 3.5 stars, 6 4 stars, 1 4.5 star, and 8 5-star reads. These numbers are a little bit skewed because of manga. I did have some really good manga reads in the month. We're gonna get into that and talk about it. So yeah, let's do that. We're gonna go from the lowest rated books, or my DNFs, to my favorite book of the month. So my first DNF was Spock, Messiah by Theodore R. Cogswell and Charles A. Spano Jr. This was something that was supposed to be on my TBR for my TBR game. The good thing is if I do try it and it just doesn't work, I can DNF without having to worry about, oh, I need a whole nother book for that thing. It was also part of my magical readathon TBR, so I had to find another book for that, but that wasn't actually too hard. But this is a Star Trek novel. This is a Star Trek adventure novel, I think. It's not actually part of like the main Star Trek novels. It's a little complicated, but basically this is about the Enterprise crew going to a planet, and they have already started the plot by the time we get into the story, where they have these like little implants in their head that give them the personality, sort of knowledge of the people of this planet, so they can, I guess, go down as scientists and not feel out of place. People wouldn't know that they're not from whatever planet they're with. Part of my problem is that, one, they were already into the story and they were trying to make it sound very sciencey without it actually being real science. Like, it just didn't make sense. But also, because of how this thing works, they were talking about the different personalities that people had, and like one of the characters that they were talking about is, I guess, a very scientific woman, does not flirt with anybody, very prudish, that kind of thing. And I guess the personality that she ended up assimilating is somebody who's very sexual, and so she was coming on to a lot of people, and just the way the guys were talking about her, both being not sexual and then being very flirtatious and sexual, was weird, and I just did not like that. But then they also talk about Spock a lot and how it's weird that like Vulcans go through Pon farr, and like they were talking about him as if he is 100% Vulcan, which obviously he's not if you know the series, but they're trying to make certain things absolutes here to make it so much more different, that people have different personalities and all this kind of stuff. Well, apparently, I didn't get very far into this, but apparently Spock has decided to not come back to the Enterprise because he wants to be the Messiah to people. Like, he thinks, or the personality that he's with thinks that he is like God. And I'm just like, I knew the title was Spock Messiah, but did I really think that's where we were going with it? No, and I just don't think that's something I want. I did look up some reviews when I was like, is this really where we're going? I only got a few, like, maybe 20 something pages in, I don't know. But a lot of the reviews for this did mention that Spock's basically in only like one chapter near the end of the book. Like, you don't actually get to see him that much, and it's not as good as you think. Like, it's basically everything that I was having issues with is throughout the entire book. So I decided this is definitely not a Star Trek novel for me. The other DNF I had was Rosewater by Tade Thompson. So this was a book that I was excited for because it is sci-fi. I think it's set in Nigeria, and it's about this like alien biodome. The thing is, the writing style is not for me. It is very blunt, quick sentences, and I don't understand what's going on because they throw you into this situation with our main character, and he's very misogynistic, very like focused on women's bodies and stuff that I just don't enjoy. But the way that he is, the personality is very off-putting, the writing is very off-putting, and then we have different time jumps that don't get specified as to what is going on, and I was so confused and off-put by the whole situation that I don't think I can read that writing style. I don't know if this is something that's very similar throughout all of his books, because there was other ones that came out more recently than Rosewater that I am curious about, but if the writing style is very similar to this, I don't think I'm going to be able to get through it. It was just something that I could not deal with. Okay, so those were the only DNFs. The next ratings that I have are 3 stars. The first one is Bear With Me by Lucy Eden. So I read a Lucy Eden very beginning of this year, like the first book that I read this year, called Resolutions, and that's sort of right before this book, because in that book we have characters who get together right after one of them breaks up with somebody else. And in this one, we're following the girl who got broken up with. So at the beginning of the story, she is very upset about stuff, and then she goes to this like cabin in the woods to like get away from it all, and we end up with a bear shifter. The first book that I read by Lucy Eden did not explain supernatural paranormal elements at all, so I knew what I was getting into going in with this, but at the same time it feels very juxtaposed having a book technically be right before this one that is 100% contemporary, no fantasy, nothing, and then getting into this. That is not why I gave it a 3 stars, because I did actually think this book was starting off much better than the other one, and I was going to give it a higher rating. However, this book is already very, very short, and it technically ends on page 142. Everything else here is extra epilogues that she decided to do later and then put into this paperback book of it. The thing is, it's 142 pages of romance and explaining bear shifters in this world, and everything happens way too quickly. And I mean, some people enjoy that, but because it's only 140 something pages, the third act breakup didn't feel like a third act breakup because there was like no third act. The coming to terms with the actual bear shifter situation was non-existent. The sex scenes were there, but it was, again, it felt way too early for me because of how quickly this book was. And so it also just ended more abruptly than I thought, because I thought we were having more time with it, but we obviously didn't because of the fact that it ended on page like 140 something, and then even the epilogues only go up to here, and there's a whole nother thing of like extra stuff. So this book is very deceiving in that way, and so because of that, it wasn't necessarily bad, but it obviously wasn't necessarily good. So for me, that means a 3 stars, something that I'm probably going to forget about eventually, but people might like it, just not me. My next 3 star, we're gonna have a longer explanation, because my next 3 star is Aurora's End by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. The other thing is, though, I did actually reread the first 2 books in the series, so we're going to talk about those very quickly and give those ratings and stuff, and then we'll get to Aurora's End. So, Aurora Rising. This was a reread for me. I originally gave it 5 stars. I still gave it 5 stars. I really do like this one here. I like the found family aspect. I like the fact that it definitely feels like a mix of like Star Trek and Firefly and Mass Effect, with how these characters vibe and how this society is and the events even in this book. I absolutely love this one. Then we get to Aurora Burning. I should say Aurora Rising does end on a cliffhanger. This one ends on a bigger cliffhanger. I think I originally gave this book like 4.5 stars. I don't think that is true. I gave it a 4-star this time because I still had fun reading it, but we're in the heads and the perspectives of some characters that I don't like as much. We have other characters that are introduced that I don't like as much. And one thing that I noticed this time compared to the first time I read these, like my favorite character is Finn. And that is 100% true, especially in Aurora Rising. But one thing I noticed is that starting in Aurora Burning, for some reason, we start to have people, characters, sexualizing the other characters a lot. And like one thing that I liked about Finn, especially in the first book, is that he is basically bi, pansexual. They don't specify it, but he's there for any and everything. He likes to use that as a joking mechanism, which is fine, but like he's very, you know, happy with whatever. The thing is, it starts to really get into a more sexual place in book 2 and then eventually book 3, and it seems to come about at the most inopportune moments. Like they're fighting for their lives, and one of the boys, not even just Finn here anymore, one of the boys is talking about boobs. And I'm just at that point where I can tell that Kristoff probably wrote that kind of stuff because it's something that I remember reading and feeling in different books from him that I just don't enjoy. I don't think we need that, especially since these characters, this is a YA series. Most of these characters are 18, yes. A couple of them are 19, yes. But at the same time, it's a YA series and it just feels too much. Still a 4-star read. I still liked a lot of it. And then we get to Aurora's End. This one has some time travel aspects, which I did assume based on some of the events that happen in book 2 and the fact that like the top says it's about time. And it's not like, oh, it's about time this happened. No, it's about time. The thing is, the time travel aspects that we had get very, very repetitive very quickly. And I know that they're trying to use it as a sort of like dire situation, like this is happening and this is why it is a tense situation. But because of how it is written, it doesn't feel that way. It just feels very repetitive. Like it could have been written easier and better to make it feel fraught. You know what I mean? When we're not in those situations, we're with other characters who have these relationships that I don't care about, that I don't like, that I don't understand. And again, some things in here for being a YA are very sexualized in ways that they don't need to be. I don't like the romantic pairings for a lot of characters here. And so I was basically just trying to get through the book. I don't think it came about in a way that I wanted. One thing I will say, for the time travel aspect, I did like the pen. They mentioned different things in book 2, like little gifts and little hints that of course made me think we're gonna have some time travel aspects. And I did like how certain ones came about in book 3, the pen specifically, because it is such a small aspect in book 2 and it comes to a bigger conclusion. Whereas something like Scarlet's necklace in here, it made sense, but at the same time didn't feel as like organic in the way that it came about. You know what I mean? So I just had some issues with this book here, with the ending, with the fact that we had a time travel novel and they didn't do anything about some of the events that happened in book 1 like I was fully expecting them to do, and they didn't. So yeah, it was just, this is a mixed bag for me. These books are a mixed bag for me. We're just gonna go with that. That's why it's a 3. It's mixed. Moving into my 3.5 stars, the first one I have here is Love of Kill Volume 1 by, I think I said Faye or Fee and something else. I think it's F-E from what I was looking at online. I will say this is a 3.5. Book 2 and book 3 that I did also read, those are 4 stars. So I'm just going to talk about them all together, but I will say I liked the next 2 volumes a little bit better than the first one. The first one does a pretty good job setting it up, but there's not enough answered or enough plot for me to give it a 4-star. But basically, I saw this build, and I think even on the back, I saw this build as like assassins with romance. And sort of, but not really. I would not consider these romance necessarily, at least yet. But basically we do have these two characters. One is an assassin and one is some sort of maybe more spy-like. Like, I don't think she's specifically an assassin, but he has a crush on her for some reason. We don't exactly know why yet, but because of that, he is helping her with her assignments by capturing the bad guys that she is going after, and sometimes killing them for her, sometimes just wrapping them up in a package, you know what I mean? And so their dynamic is very interesting. As we get further into the volumes, we do have a little bit more mystery sort of elements related to her and her family, and I'm very curious about where this is going to go. They're not 5-star reads necessarily, but they are very, very fun, and like I said, the first volume was 3.5 stars, but the rest of them have been 4 stars so far, and I do think I want to continue. My next 3.5 star read was Beneath Black Sails by Claire Sager. This is something that I buddy read with Heather, so thank you so much, Heather, for buddy reading with me. This was a very good way to keep me motivated to read it. I'm giving it a 3.5 because I don't think this first volume had enough action and plot for me. We do have this build as like a sea witch and a pirate hunter that are enemies coming together to be lovers, that kind of thing. Because this is a fantasy romance that I picked up last year sometime. And I do think that is appropriate. My issue, and this is a me issue, not like a book issue, they said like sea witch, and they literally say on the summary, a sea witch wanted for murder. When I hear sea witch, I think Ursula, and so I was expecting more from the sea witch aspect than just the fact that our main character of Lady Vice can like control the ocean a little bit. Like, she can control water and storms in the ocean like a bit. So I was just expecting more from the actual fantasy aspect. There is some fantasy in here. It is 100% enemies to lovers, but at the same time, I didn't fully see the development of the romance like I wish I would have. The characters, I like Lady Vice quite a bit. The guy character, though, is very pessimistic to a fault, and because of that, I'm not entirely sure about him. I don't like his motivations. Like, it took him a while to like decide what he was gonna do, and then he flip-flops a little bit, and so because of that, I don't like him very much. I did like her. I did not like their romance. I'm curious about where this story is gonna go next, because it ends not exactly on a cliffhanger of like, oh, we didn't get any answers, but it does open it up for more adventure in this series, and so I am curious about that. But because I gave it a 3.5, I'm not entirely sure when I'm going to continue with it. You know what I mean? Because it's not a bad book. It just had some things in it that I was personally like, are we sure this is where we're ending it? Or, you know, that kind of thing. So it was a fun buddy read. I just don't know when I'm going to continue. Moving into the 4 stars, we did already talk about Love of Kill Volume 2 and 3, so the next one I have here is Can't Stop Cursing You Volume 3 by Kensuke Koba. This is the first volume of this series that I have given less than a 5. I have absolutely loved these books so far. We have curse killings. It's very horror aspect because like there are deaths in these books, but it's also sort of a mystery with our main character trying to figure out like who is doing the curse killing and that kind of stuff. This one I thought was just slightly too complicated for what the other 2 books and, you know, mysteries in the series were. So it was just one of those things where I was expecting a little bit more from it. Like, it was very complicated, not in a way that was good. It introduced more characters on the like curse catching side than I think we had in the first 2 books, and so I did have a fun time reading it. I was just still expecting to want it to be a 5-star from what I had previously read, and it wasn't. Each book in this series so far does follow a different curse killing, so we still have like our main character, and he in the first book was posing as a teacher in a high school, and I think he's still technically a teacher in the high school because one of the students is like his assistant. But because of that, we're now getting introduced to a wider world in here, and the actual like mystery curse killing thing that happened this time just was a little bit too wide in scope. Like, I was hoping for it to bridge the gap a little bit between the other books, but I do still really like the art style and the fact that it is 100% like a paranormal horror sort of thing. So I will definitely want to continue more in the series, although I don't think volume 4 is out in English yet. So the next 4-star is actually Aurora Burning. A lot of the times I feel like if I'm reading comics, graphic novels, or manga, those ones are slightly lower on the list of whatever star ratings I have than the novels because they're so much quicker. But this one and a couple other ones I think were better than Aurora Burning. So I have Beyond the Promised Neverland by Kaiju Shirai. This is... Can I make it so it's not too shiny for you guys? This is a short story collection where I guess it's previously written short stories from before they did The Promised Neverland. But there is also like a little epilogue in the back, and most of these were really fun and really quick and easy to read. There were a couple that I wasn't as into, but I didn't mind, and very much like The Promised Neverland, they usually have a little element of them that is dark. That's all I will say in case you have not read The Promised Neverland, but it looks very, very cute, and there is some darkness there, and so a lot of the stories went like that. I did like the epilogue that we had here for The Promised Neverland as well, and so yeah, 4 stars for a manga short story collection. The next 4-star is another manga. It is Black Paradox by Junji Ito. So this is one story. It is quite short compared to like some of the Junji Ito books that I have, but that is because this is one story. I did like this one. Some of his ones that are like a one-off are not that great in my opinion. This one I really did like. I will say just right off the bat, this does deal with suicide as a topic. Like, the whole point of this book is these 4 people come together with like a suicide pact because they don't want to live anymore, and they all have different issues, and as we go along through this story we find out what they are, but also there is a paradox and like this other worldly type of situation going on that comes about because of what they're going through. I did think it was very weird and creepy, but I did like it quite a bit, so that's why it is a 4-star. My 4.5 star is Well Traveled by Jen DeLuca. So far with this series, I gave Well Met 5 stars, I gave Well Played 4.5 stars, I gave Well Matched 5 stars, and I gave Well Traveled 4.5 stars. So ultimately, Jen DeLuca can do no wrong. I really, really like what I read from her, especially with this series. Like, I want her to branch out a little bit just because I want to read more, but I also do love this series. The one thing I will say is I think this is my least favorite romance from this series of companion novels. However, it is still a 4.5 star because I absolutely love the characters. I love Lulu, I love Dex, I love the situation they're put in, because Lulu is like just quit her job of being a lawyer and is trying to figure out life, and so that's why she ends up joining the Renaissance Fair, because these are Ren Fair romances. I love that whole aspect. However, I don't think the romance specifically came together in a way where I was like, oh, that's when they fell in love with each other. And I don't mean that necessarily in a bad way, but this definitely starts off a little bit more like Friends with Benefits. And that's not my favorite thing. I didn't mind it in here though, because I do really love the development of the characters, and it takes a while for the Friends with Benefits sort of situation to occur. So we get a lot of development of Lulu and Dex and what Lulu's doing in life. And like, I loved that. I loved seeing her and like, what is she gonna do? How is she dealing with dropping life and dealing with Ren Fair? But because of that, I never felt like it was an actual romance in a way. Like, I was still waiting for those romance beats to drop like in the first 3 books. And so I still really love this one, but it wasn't quite what I was expecting in that way. So 4.5 stars. I will still constantly pick up Jen DeLuca's work. I love, love, love these characters. It just wasn't my favorite romance. And then moving into 5 stars, my lowest 5 star is Aurora Rising, mostly just because it was a reread, so we're gonna skip past that since we talked about it already. My next one is Tombs by Junji Ito. So this one is a short story collection, his newest short story collection, and it is right up there with Shiver and Lovesickness for me. I absolutely love this one. There's probably a couple stories in here that weren't as well done, because that always seems to happen, but I loved Tombs. I loved The Window Next Door. I don't even remember all these ones. I really liked The Strange Tale of the Tunnel. The bronze statue was a little bit weird. I think Floaters was really fun. The Bloody Story of Shirosuna. Yeah, almost every single one of these. There's a couple of them that I remember being not as like, ooh, this was good. But this is one of my favorite short story collections from him. Shiver was like my favorite, ultimate favorite, like when that first came out. It is very, very, very creepy. Lovesickness was also very good, and then this one is like right up there. Like, they are my top 3 short story collections. Junji Ito, in case you don't know, is a horror manga author and artist, and yes, that is what you're going to get into. They are very creepy. The art style is, you know, epically Junji Ito. I loved it. My next 5-star read was A Tournament of Crowns by Elise Kova. This is the 3rd book in the Trial of Sorcerers series. I gave the first book 5 stars, I gave the second book 4 stars, and I gave this one 5 stars. The second book did not have games or tournaments or trials, which I think is part of the reason I love the first one and this one so much, is we do get those magical trial aspects. However, one thing that I have realized, especially with this book here, it follows a very similar path to the first book in this series, where I'm reading it and I'm liking what I'm reading, but it's not a full 5-star read. Like, I like the characters, I like what's going on, I like the trials and the games, and then we get to a point where it's usually about 100 pages from the end or so where things really start to come together. Like, there are many elements in these books throughout the beginning of, you know, whatever I'm reading, where it's like, oh, here's this and here's this, and like, we don't really know how everything's gonna happen or come together. We know something's happening, but we don't know how or why. And then all of a sudden it all starts to like spark, and it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going, and it like feels like, you know, a snowball rolling down the hill, where it just keeps gathering speed and becoming bigger and larger, and it's just like a spectacle where I am literally unable to tear myself away from the book because I need to know what's going to happen. And then the ending happens with a bit of a cliffhanger, and I'm just like left gobsmacked because of what happened. It's a 5-star read, because like, when you can literally do that, and this, I'm not saying that like the beginning of the series or the beginning of the book wasn't good, because it was. It just wasn't like a 5. It probably would have been a 4. But then when you get to that part where you just can't put the book down because it is so good and everything is happening, my emotions get all tangled up in it, and it's a 5-star read. It's a 5-star read. I definitely need to continue more. I think the next book in this series is called An Air of Frost, something like that, and it's coming out like next February, so I will definitely be picking that up. Then we're almost done here. My next 4 5-star reads are the first 4 volumes of My Love Mix-Up by Wataru Hinakure. This series, I actually started with book 1 on my live reading sprints, and I'm glad I did, because it was one of those things where I was like, you know what, I don't want to get into a full book yet, which is why I was reading a lot of manga this month. I'm gonna pick up a manga. I don't know what I want to read. Do I want one of the horror ones? Do I want a cutesy one? Like, let's see. I picked up this one, and like I said, I read the first 4 volumes. They're very white, so it doesn't seem like they're gonna be focusing on very well. I'm so glad I picked these up. So this is a series of mix-ups, 100%. So basically we have 2 boys that end up in a relationship, and I will say that they actually do try dating in here, and I think they continue on. Obviously, I'm only in the first 4 volumes, but it's not like bait or anything like that. It is 100% an LGBTQ romance, but they end up together because of a mix-up. One boy has a crush on the girl sitting next to him. He needs to borrow an eraser, and he borrows an eraser from her that has this other boy's name on it. He ends up dropping the eraser, and this boy picks it up and thinks it's his eraser, and thinks that he is in love with him, even though he had a crush on the girl, and the girl obviously has a crush on this guy because of the eraser, and it ends up being this whole big mix-up thing. But throughout the mix-up, the boy that had the crush on the girl that borrowed the eraser actually does have feelings then for the first guy that was on the eraser. And it like, are you even following me here? I don't even know if you are, but it's all because of a mix-up. This is a very, very cute story. I love the art style here. The thing is, there are some parts where the art style is not cute anymore. It's funny. This reminds me a lot of like Tamaki from Ouran High School Host Club, but not in an annoying way. But every so often it's just very overly emotional, over the top. And I love it. It has made me giggle and laugh out loud multiple times. It has also tugged at my heartstrings, and every single volume so far has some sort of mix-up with it, and I love it. I love it so much. I need to pick up more because I only picked up the first 4 volumes to start with, but I need to read more in the series because it is adorable. And then finally, we are on the last one. Hopefully you guys know what's coming because I mentioned this earlier in the video. My favorite book of the month is The Plus One by Maisie Eddings. So this I did read as an ARC. I absolutely loved this one. 5 out of 5 stars. Obviously, I think this was my very first read of April, and so because I read so many things in April, it feels like I didn't read it in April. It feels like it was so long ago, but I love this one. This, like I said, it follows 2 characters who are going to, I believe it's her brother's wedding, and they decide to be each other's like fake dates. She had just gotten cheated on and broken up with her boyfriend. He is somebody who is like a doctor without borders sort of situation where he's out and about a lot, and so when they come back they don't really have an extra person, and they decide that it would be better to fake date and be at this wedding. However, they are friends from childhood. They've been friends since like he was friends with her brother, that kind of thing, but they also like to push each other's buttons, so it's not quite an enemies to lovers situation, but they do have that whole like, we're supposed to be sort of fighting, but right now we're connecting a lot more, and I absolutely love that. I love the talk about mental health and everything like that in here because she is a psychiatrist and he is dealing with PTSD. I liked how it was represented in here. I liked how it felt very real, and like the things that he is dealing with are definitely things that he is dealing with, and it's not something that is going to be fixed by the end of the book, and this relationship is not magic. Like, I do like how, even though it's a cutesy cover, it does deal with some of those hard topics. I loved their romance 100%. Like, I literally loved everything about this, so because of that I had to buy a copy. I read it, so it doesn't count for my TBR thing, which is good because I read it at the beginning of the month and I bought it near like the middle to the end of the month, but I just could not have a copy. Does that make sense? I needed one in my hands and to put on my favorite shelf that is behind me, and so that is everything. This video is probably going to be way too long. I was hoping it wasn't going to be because the haul wasn't huge. It's probably going to be. I'm sorry about that, guys. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos coming out on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I will see you then. Bye.